Hello, this is a quick introduction to the female menstrual cycle. Maybe you want to recap because you've learned this before or you never have. This is going to be the basics if you're interested. I'm not going to cover hormones and stuff because that can get complicated. And also, if you did learn this before, stick around until the end because I'm going to share a piece of information that you probably did not know. So let's start with the basics, the anatomy. So we have our vagina, the cervix, which is the opening into the uterus, which is where the baby grows. And then we have our fallopian tube. We have two of them. There's the second one. Fallopian tube. And our ovary. This is where the eggs are. We have two of them as well. Ovaries. So, we are born with about 7 million eggs. And then by the time we reach puberty, they kind of die off. By the time we reach puberty, we have around 300,000. And so they are kind of not mature eggs yet. They are what we call follicles. And they're kind of like these little seedlings. It's these guys here, follicles. And so what happens after your period, at the beginning of your new kind of cycle, is you have each ovary has a bunch of these follicles, and in both ovaries, some of these will mature. About 15 to 20 will start maturing, as you see here, and they will grow like that. And you may have heard before that each kind of every month, your ovaries take turns releasing an egg. That's not entirely true. It's basically they both have maturing follicles, and then whichever ovary has a follicle that matures and like reaches this stage first will release the egg. It's kind of random. So once it has matured, then the follicle will release the egg into the fallopian tube, as you see here. It will release like that into there. And so the egg will chill in the fallopian tube, and if it gets fertilized within 24 hours by sperm that was came there that day or was there previously, because sperm can survive up to 5 days inside of here, then it will get fertilized and it'll travel down and implant in the uterus. If not, then the cycle continues. You'll get your period and stuff again. So what happens though to the rest of the follicle that wasn't the egg after the egg is released is it degrades and becomes this thing here, this flower looking thing called the corpus luteum. And what that does is it releases hormones and creates your uterine lining that is going to may house a baby, and if not, that's the stuff that gets shed during your period. So the corpus luteum helps create that. And so your cycle after your period is divided into two parts. You have your follicular phase, because that is when the follicle is maturing. Then you have ovulation, when the egg is released. And then the second half is called your luteal phase, because that is when the corpus luteum is chilling, doing its job. And so the part that you may not have known before is that your luteal phase is not affected by anything, not affected by any other hormones or stress or anything. It's going to be around 12 to 16 days, and it's always like the same for every person. Whereas your follicular phase, the length of that can change depending on if you're stressed and basically different hormonal changes that are going on. So if you, before ovulation, let's say, I don't know, you're on day 9 or something, and you are flying somewhere, traveling, or you're, I don't know, moving, or you do a lot of exercise, something that your body can interpret as stress, what that can do is push your ovulation back, delay it, so it'll happen later. And so what happens then is that your follicular phase becomes longer, and then your ovulation happens later, but your luteal phase stays the same length. So your period will end up being later. So if you've ever had a pregnancy scare where you thought you were pregnant but you weren't, this is what happened. And so how can you know if you're pregnant or it's just stress? Well, I encourage you to read this book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler, and it outlines this birth control method, but also this method of where you can, using your temperature and a bunch of other signs that your body has, you can determine when you ovulate. And so if you know that you ovulated later than usual, then you know that you can expect a later period and there's nothing to be stressed about. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that, learned something, and happy days.